Hey, everybody, I'm Tommy, and you're on the boat. What's happening? Kristen Melinda, good to see you. Sandy Wendy, how are you? Hey, Mike Bragg. Hey, John. Joanne Adams, I am glad that you are here. Hello, Jordan. Chase the Heat is here. Hey, Jules. Jules Dixon. Yeah, here we go. I'm glad that you're here. West Coast Fancy Nancy, what's happening? Hey, Renee B. You know what? Can we put a one in the chat for Renee B. and her new job? She started it today, which I think is one of the coolest things ever. People, this is a show by popular demand. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Parm on this one. How's that? Parm Jetsani. There you go. Was I even close? I'm glad that you are here from Toronto, Canada, a city I've spent plenty of time in, believe it or not. Love Toronto. It's a great city. Just Joan, good to see you. Hey, Jeannie Hansen is here. Brock Bandy, did you apologize at the end of the last feed? You know that that's not allowed. If you carry a wrench and you don't make every single show, this may come as a shock to you. I'm just glad that you're willing to carry a wrench. I'm not judging anybody for when they get here. Brock, you know better than that. This is a case that so many people, right? So many folks, and I'm proud of you, Renee B. I hope that this job is absolutely fantastic for you. There's a prayer from me. I know you're going to do incredible things in this. I really do. I know that you're going to do incredible things in this. For those who don't know, she's going to be working in the same kind of field that I spent a little time in my damn self. This is going to be her opportunity to try to help people who are struggling with addiction problems, and that is as cool as it gets. Hey, Karen Dole, how are you? Karen Dahl? Sorry about that. Karen Dahl. I am glad that you are here, Karen. Audra in Denver, what's happening? Glad you're here. So here's the deal. This is a case, the O.J. Simpson case, that captured the imagination of people across the country and created a lot of true crime aficionados, including me. I don't get into tons of details about certain parts of my past, but I was wildly ill when the O.J. Simpson trial started, and I was the kind of ill that wasn't going to work. I couldn't really do anything other than kind of sit around and wait for everything I was going through to get better. And right as that happened, June 12th hit, and the crime scene at Bundy in Brentwood, which is, of course, a part of California we've been talking about a lot because of the Michelle and Rob Reiner murders. But this came up briefly in a show where I was talking about Nick Reiner and what the defense might choose to do. And I'll tell you something, the more that things come out, and I'm going to be doing a show about this tomorrow, but there's been some people that have come out and said that all of the stuff we're hearing about Rob Reiner saying he was terrified of his kid, apparently toward the end of his life, he was saying, you know what, he felt pretty good about where the kid was. He seemed to be doing pretty well. Now, maybe he told different people different things, but that's the kind of stuff that ends up right on witness stands. Alex Moore, good to see you. This O.J. Simpson case is a perfect example of how you can blow an absolutely perfect prosecution. Let's go over some stuff really quickly. Number one, they found O.J. Simpson's blood at the crime scene. They found Nicole Brown Simpson's blood at his house and in the Bronco, as well as Ron Goldman's blood. So, hey, Carolina, Canada, glad you're here. Hey, Carlos, glad you're here. Think about this for a second. Your blood's at the crime scene. The victim's blood is not only at your house, but it's also in your car. It's everywhere. There was so much forensic evidence that said O.J. Simpson did this. How in the hell did this guy get found not guilty? And the truth is, if you do stupid stuff as a prosecution, you can blow the perfect case. And this is going to sound crazy, but John, this actually is a fairly decent argument. Who could have been strong enough? Ron Goldman was a guy that was very fit. There were two people there. And not to get, I can absolutely do one on the Diddy appeal. Diddy has absolutely no chance on his appeal, Parm, none. And the reason that he doesn't is because an appeal, just real briefly, and then we'll do this because it's literally this simple. An appeal in this country doesn't mean you're going to argue whether or not Sean Combs was innocent or guilty. You're going to argue whether or not anything was done procedurally with procedure that is a problem. Rune Subramanian wrote page upon page upon page on every ruling. And then he went and did a beautiful thing in terms of the sentencing. He didn't go above the guidelines. He actually went a little below what everyone recommended. There's no chance in hell did he get any play on this at all. Absolutely it did. Did the Rodney King trial have an effect? It had an effect in more than one way, and we're going to talk about it, Renee B., but you're spot on. The first way that it had an effect was it made people doubt the LAPD, right? It also made people believe that racism was a huge problem within the LAPD. Shocker, it was. And one of the people that really kind of drove that narrative is the guy that found the bloody glove, right? Ron Furman. Was it Ron Furman? Mark Furman. Sorry, Mark Furman found the bloody glove at the Rockingham crime scene. There were two crime scenes in the O.J. Simpson case. One was at Bundy. That is where the two bodies were found, right? You're right. This was as bad as you could possibly do a case. However, they still could have won easily. There was enough evidence to make this guy go away forever. But they did some really stupid things. One of them was putting Mark Furman on the stand. You didn't have to. There are rules of evidence and how you can enter it in a trial. And one of them is to say, this would have been found by anyone. Now you don't have to put the jackwagon that found it on the stand. They also chose to exclude people because they sold their stories. This was one of the biggest media events in history, not just because of the fact that OJ was, it's hard for people that didn't follow this or aren't old enough to realize that OJ was beloved by everybody. He was considered by many to be one of the greatest football players that had ever lived. And when he got out, he sold everything. He did commercials for car companies. He did commercials for glove companies. He did commercials for anything. And he came across as a very, very likable guy, right? This was one of those situations where most people didn't look at OJ as black or white. He was married to a white woman. He hung out with people of every race. He was one of those people that kind of transcended race, right? He was very, very wealthy. He was very successful. He was able to pick on himself, right? He did that series of movies with Leslie Nielsen, where the Naked Gun series, he played Nordberg, one of the cops. This was very, very humorous stuff, and everybody kind of loved OJ, right? One of the reasons that this went down the way it did was because of that. People didn't want to believe that the juice was guilty of this. Then you had the LAPD, and they were terrified. So instead of putting their best prosecutors on this, they put some people that, with all due respect to the prosecutors, weren't very good at this. I do too. You're a bad man, OJ. Norm Macdonald used to finish everything up with, "You're a bad man, OJ." And he was. OJ was a horrific human being. And one of the guys that was his agent for over 25 years. Now, this isn't his sports agent. This is the agent that helped him get gigs with Hertz or with Isotoner gloves or with the sunglass company or anything else that he shilled. He said, was OJ a really bad man who could pretend to be good sometimes? Or was he a really good man that snapped and did something really horrible? And the truth is, maybe we'll never know, right? But here's some arguments for why this was a really bad dude. When the killing of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman took place at the Bundy address, which is where OJ used to live with his ex-wife, his kids were in the house. He knew that. He left them alone after killing these two people. By the way, we've been going over this because of the Michelle, excuse me, because of the Michelle and Rob Reiner case. We've been going over this. What happens when you kill two people? It becomes capital murder. They didn't go for the death penalty. If they had, they would have had a very different jury. Because in order to impanel a jury for a death penalty case, you have to ask all of these people if they're willing to put someone to death. And you get a very different type of jury. But they chose not to do that. They also chose not to have this case tried in Santa Monica, because moving it down to LA would completely change, right? The venue would be different. No one would know about the case. It was ludicrous. They said it was to get a more diverse jury. Then they brought in people to say, this is the kind of jury you ought to pick. And they said, hey, look who it is. It's my better half. It does, doesn't it? I prefer the white one. This was a gift from my girl, and I love the new, and it fits a whole hell of a lot better. The other one started getting a little tight on me, so pretty happy about that. And I'm glad you are here. You are home safe, and that is a beautiful thing. I miss you, but I'm glad that you made it home safe. This was one of those situations where they went with a black prosecutor and a female prosecutor because they thought it was going to look better, right? This is literally why they made the decision. They didn't pick the most qualified people. They went with, this is going to be a good look. We're going to go with a black dude. We're going to go with a female. This is going to be great. Unfortunately, they weren't qualified to handle this case. Not trying to be a dick, but that's just a fact. They were not qualified. Instead of trying this in Santa Monica, which would have been a really good idea, they went down to LA, where now you have people that really distrust the LA police for good reason. Mark Furman made videos where he said he couldn't stand seeing a white woman with a black man, right? Not videos. I'm sorry, audios. He was intending to do a book, and the ghostwriter had been recording all of this stuff. He talked about planting evidence. He talked about beating confessions out of black men with using rubber hoses and phone books. Why put this guy on the stand? You didn't have to. They didn't have to put this guy on the stand. Choosing to not go for a death penalty jury meant that they were going to get a softer jury. If you went for a death penalty jury, they could not go for the death penalty. I mean, honestly, they could still say the guy, we're not going to give him the death penalty or whatever. But if you had gotten a very, well, thank you. What a kind thing to say. It makes my heart warm, Reese. Instead of doing that, they didn't listen to any of the jury experts. Now, the defense sure as hell did, but they decided that it would be a really good idea to put as many women on the jury as they can because they weren't going to put up with the domestic violence stuff. Then they blew off all the domestic violence stuff they had. The only talk of domestic violence was in the beginning when they first opened the case. They had planned somewhere in the ballpark of 66 witnesses that were going to come on there and say that OJ beat the piss out of his wife on a regular basis. Right? This was an abusive situation. People saw it. They had witnesses. They had all kinds of stuff. There was also a witness that saw OJ running, right? Saw OJ running in his Bronco, went up on the median. The OJ rolled down the window to yell at the woman. She said, I knew he was a professional football player, but I couldn't place the name. Then I heard the voice, and I recognized it from a film I had watched the night before, one of the Naked Gun films. That's absolutely a bullet-proof person to put on the stand. But for $5,000, she sold her story to hard copy, and the prosecution thought no one's going to believe anybody that sold their story to hard copy. You know what, Reese? I feel bad for you. It's 17 hours. That's tough. I spent, I think, just under 30 getting here, though, because I had to go from Tucson to Texas. Anyway, so they also chose not to put on a guy who said, I just sold him a stiletto with a 12-inch blade from a cutlery store, because that person for $12,000 sold his story to the National Enquirer. They chose to not put people on the stand that made this a far more rock-solid case, and instead put people on the stand who were racist, right? Racist. People that said, I don't like seeing a black and white couple. I don't like that. Makes me sick. You put that asshole on the stand? Then on top of that, now I don't think Mark Furman planted anything, but if you collect evidence poorly, one of the things that is going to happen is that you're going to get people that just simply don't believe any of the things that are going to be said. One of the things that happened was the collection of evidence. And someone mentioned that earlier. But in the collection of evidence, somebody took a blood sample, right? 1.5 cc's of the blood sample was missing. They took 8. They tested 6.5. What happened to the 1.5? Well, they took all of the blood evidence in the Bronco, and it turned out to be 1.5 cc's. And they go, well, look, all they had to do was plant this. It also had the 2 victims' blood in it, which would have been a little bit more difficult. But when they got to the DNA part of this, keep in mind, we absolutely believe in DNA. They have been teaching us this. Hey, Angie Mo, they've been teaching us about DNA. We've seen it in every one of the Law and Orders. We've seen it in every cold case file, right? DNA just simply can't be disproven, right? It's a 1 in 8 billion chance or whatever. They spent 6 months. Let me say that again. They spent a half a year, right? A half a year talking about DNA. And 2 lawyers for the Dream Team, right? That Barry Scheck was sort of the leader of it. But these 2 guys worked for the Innocence Project. They were forever getting people off who got screwed over, right? And using DNA to do it. Everything they put on, if they had just gone on and said, hey, the DNA matches, instead they had to continue to do this over and over and over and over again. And it numbed the jury. Those people sat there like this, falling asleep. And chain of custody is important, says Renee B. Chain of custody is a very simple concept. If I pick up a murder weapon at a scene, I put it in a paper bag, right? I put a piece of evidence tape on the outside, sealing it so no one can touch it. I write down where it was found, pictures are taken to show where it was found, all of this stuff. And then who was it handed to next? They're going to sign that same bag, that same form, so we know who touched this. How about this? How about removing the blood of O.J. Simpson and instead of taking it to the lab, swinging it by the crime scene? They showed photographs of socks that had been found in O.J. Simpson's bedroom, right? That didn't seem to have blood on it. And then the next time that you see them, they kind of did seem to have blood on them. And the pieces of paper that they were set on, the blood stains had gotten all the way to the bottom of where they put it inside. If the blood had been dried the night before, maybe that wouldn't happen. Maybe it would. Who freaking knows? But once you start chipping little holes in this is going to, there's a shocker. Your dog is being judgy. How's that breath? I love Gertrude, but she's got breath that, let's just say is a little rugged. Her dog, tough breath. Anyway, all of these things began to chip holes in this. And this is going to sound horrible, but you had to find him not guilty. You had to, because reasonable doubt is all you need. If the guy that found the glove admits he's a racist, admits he's planted evidence, now he didn't admit it on the stand. They just had evidence to prove it. He denied it on the stand, which means he perjured himself, right? With all due respect, Reese, I won't touch that one. I'm not going to touch that one. Now you've got one of your star witnesses that is a liar. He just perjured himself on the stand. So you're going to get up as the defense attorney, right, Johnny Cochran, and say, the guy that found the glove, we already know he's a liar, right? He lied. We have tapes where he uses the N-word and talking about planting evidence on N-words and beating them with hoses to get confessions, bragging about it, right? Go back to what's called the Rampart scandal. You know how many people had to be let out of prison because of all of the crap that guys like Furman were doing? This is terrifying stuff. Al Callen planted the glove between 11:10 and 11:35. You know, here's the thing. Cato Kalin heard him going over the wall. The banging on the wall made the painting move. Remember all of this testimony? Cato Kalin was, hey, Chicka Cherry Cola. He was the most famous couch surfer in history. On the Bundy property were 3 bungalows out back because everybody has 3 small houses for people to stay in on their property, right? This is a rich guy in a rich part of town where murders don't seem to happen. Well, Real Justice, you can run with that if you want. No one ever went over the wall. You think Al Callen went back there to plant a bloody glove to get OJ convicted? God bless you. Honestly, I can't. That 2-foot thick, 15-foot high hedgerow did not go all the way across the entire wall. If you get a look at that back picture, there is a part of it that most assuredly does. And I'll tell you something. You wouldn't believe some of the shit I've climbed over after robbing a bank or after being somewhere where your heart is doing this one. I'm a former criminal, and I promise you I'd get over anything, right? I promise you. So explain to me the cut on his finger that leaked blood all the way up the driveway. He got cut in Chicago and was still bleeding when he got all the way back. That's OJ's testimony. But you believe all of this was there? Oh, Real Justice, God bless you. So do you think he's innocent? Help me out. Tell me your theory on this. God bless you. It doesn't take much. It takes a couple of people on a jury that buy into this kind of bullshit. Explain to me how this man's blood was at the crime scene and their blood was at the house. Or if you watch OJ's or listen to the original interview is just on tape, right? Blood goes from Rockingham to the front door. Correct. It goes from the Bronco to the front door. OJ did it, and Arnell is Charlie. Okay. All right. God bless you. No blood tour away from the glove. I don't find that surprising in any way. Honestly, the blood soaked up into the glove, right? It doesn't surprise me at all that there was no blood leaking away from there. because AC wasn't bleeding when AC planted the. Why would AC plant the glove? I know that I'm getting a little derailed here, but why would Al Cowens plant the freaking glove on OJ's backyard? Was that to set up Mark Furman, or because they really weren't friends? Oh, I hate software updates, man. I get a call from a family member and then a freaking update, which I will not take. If you update your phone, nothing good happens. Look, here's the thing, Real Justice. The argument that Al Cowens would plant a glove at OJ's house, for what freaking reason? Honestly, I mean, where does that come from? Oh, no, to ensure OJ was convicted for the murders AC knew OJ committed. Interesting. That's an interesting angle. God bless you. Hey, it takes 30 seconds from the time you type something up to where the time I see it, right? I work through StreamYard. So there's about a 30-second delay. I'm not ignoring you. That's just kind of how it works. That's an interesting angle. For real, it is. Any way you shake it, OJ Simpson murdered his family. Got me. You got me. No, it's a theory. It's a dog shit theory, but it's a theory. So Al Cowens wanted to frame OJ. He could have just said, while we were in the Bronco, he said he did it. Okay? But Al Cowens didn't go to the prosecution and tell him anything. So he was going to go plant that glove because he really wanted OJ to get caught. They were in that car together with OJ carrying a pistol, right? Right? All Al Cowens had to do was call the prosecution and say, hey, on that long Bronco chase, OJ told me he killed his wife and he wanted to take himself out because of it. And that would be a lockdown instant. He's going to prison. OJ wasn't in the Bronco. Now you're a blithering idiot. With all due respect, that is one of the most photographed scenes in history. In history. Him driving down the road with Al Cowens in that Bronco is one of the most. There were 6 different helicopters that tracked that. OJ wasn't in it. The low-speed chase was staged. Okay. Now, with all due respect, I won't be talking to you anymore today. But God bless you. It's a hell of a theory. So, how to blow a perfect prosecution. One, I mean, there's still video out there, asshat. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? How do you think? I'm not even going to waste any more time on this. With all due respect, that is just, well, and he's doing a decent job. Somebody time him out for 500 seconds. Tired of hearing this shit. You got a wrench, time his ass out. You can come back tomorrow. Real Justice, I love you. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. This was an absolute abortion of a decision. This decision was not Marcia Clark's. It probably should have been talked about and just shot down. Christopher Darden, the second chair prosecutor, said, we're going to have him try the glove on. If you take any glove, I was a guy that skied for a living, right? So when the summer time came, everything that you've been skiing in, which is spring skiing, right? Very, very wet snow. I'm sorry, Quibbs, you're probably right. Very, very wet snow. The gloves go like this and they shrink up. The following season, you try to get your hand in those. Your best bet, as anybody from Vermont will tell you, is to go put it on a stove or near, I don't mean like a kitchen stove, I mean like a wood burning stove. Put it on there until it starts heating the leather up a little bit so that you can get your hands in. That glove sat for about a year, just drying and doing this number. Then on top of that, so that they wouldn't get cross-contamination, he had to put on a latex glove before he put the other glove on. Who didn't think that that wasn't going to be a good fit? You understand what I'm saying? More importantly, you got to trust that OJ isn't going to go like that with his hand. Can't get it on, right? Like, I mean, if you held him down and pulled the glove on, it was one of the dumbest decisions in the history of prosecution. So was not believing the consultants, people that spend their entire life studying what juries do. That's right. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit. Now, on a side note, you may or may not believe this, right? But Cassie Ventura said that in the case where Sean Puffy Combs fired his gun at the nightclub, hit Natanya Rubin in the face, right? All of that stuff went on at that nightclub, and Shine Barrow went to prison for 10 years. Johnny Cochran was the lawyer on this. On that case, Johnny Cochran was the attorney. And according to Diddy, Cochran knew that there was a payoff. Now, Johnny Cochran is dead. There's no way for him to say, hey, you know what? Obviously, that's BS. So we will say it's not proven, right? But allegedly, somebody paid off that jury, right? Now, whether or not he knew about it or not, who knows? But deciding to play the race card in this was genius from a prosecution standpoint. And I'll be really honest, and this is going to piss all kinds of people off. But you got to find O.J. Simpson not guilty with the hatchet job they did on this prosecution, because you have to prove that someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I'm not going to go with our Canadian friend and believe that Al Cowens wouldn't put that in there and that the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase was staged. For what freaking advantage? I can't possibly imagine, right? But let's just say that the most photographed chase in history, and I've seen a gazillion pictures of OJ in that car, right? While they were filming it, staged, okay, maybe, but highly unlikely. I guess they could have gone in, stolen OJ's gun, right? Because OJ was found in the car with a pistol. They could have done all of these things. Here's another thing that the prosecution didn't do, which was stupid, like you read about. Oh, thank you. One of the stupidest things that the prosecution did was, why not take the fake beard he had in the car, all of the cash he had? The guy was getting ready to run, right? Premeditation, post-meditation, showing that you were guilty. Why were you in that car talking about blowing your head off? If you listen to the things that OJ said, he changed his story so many times. Hold on one second. Sorry, people, family and whatnot. This is one of those situations where you could have showed that this guy was absolutely aware of his guilt. Listening to all of the different varieties and different versions he told of how he cut himself on the glass, how all of this went down was absolutely bizarre. They did have footprints at the scene that matched a pair of shoes called Bruno Mali's. And that was a company that paid OJ at one time. They hadn't been toward the end of his life, but he had, and he said, those shoes are butt ugly. I don't own Bruno Mali's. And then they took pictures of him, blew them up big as dad's, and showed that here is the guy wearing the Bruno Mali's with the exact same footprint, the same sole print. There was also witnesses like the limo driver, all of the people that went on there. It was a bulletproof case. But when you allow reasonable doubt, hey, Pete Taylor, you have to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. Anybody says, wait a second, you took 8 cc's of blood. There were 6.5 cc's that were tested. 1.5 is missing, and that's the same amount of OJ's blood that was collected out of the Bronco. Doesn't mean they planted it, but it does plant a seed of reasonable doubt. Then the guy that found the bloody glove is a friggin' racist and a piece of shit. Now, they've forgotten that because now, big news companies, I think he might be a Fox guy. But every time there's a crime, they bring him on so that you can absolutely say, yeah, no, this is a guy that knows an awful lot about crime. He's a racist. He's a piece of shit. He should have been canceled, right? If that kind of thing happened back then. But he's made a living because of the OJ trial. He's able to go on and be paid to be an expert. He's an absolute piece of human trash. One of these days, Reese, I'm hoping that you will realize you are just as smart as Tommy and Johnny in different ways. You would not have survived and escaped. She is so much smarter than me, you have no idea. She doesn't see that. Someday she will. The ability to memorize something isn't necessarily smarts, right? The ability to react in fast times, right? People that are quick on their feet, and I've never met anybody quicker on their feet than my girl. Literally, never. It's absolutely bizarre to me sometimes. And it's funny because we use a lot of the same ideas and references, but she gets it out before I do it. I'll just look at her and sort of nod and go, good one. Johnny says, smarter than me too, no joke. Yeah, but hopefully someday she will get that. I'm going to keep telling her. At some point it'll sink in. So the reason that this is worth talking about, right? It's ancient history, right? It isn't. It isn't. So many bad decisions were made that this is one of those things that could happen again. And whenever the pressure comes in this way, they were so concerned about the press. You remember Marsha Clark changing her hair a couple of different times? Do you know why that happened? Because they were doing all of these, like a president running for office. They were literally doing groups of people looking like, hey, good reference, Johnny Scoville. He is Clarence Beeks. All of the test groups were saying, we don't like her hair. She's coming across bitchy. If she gets a different haircut, are you kidding me? Like that's where we came to in this. If you start worrying about diversity in your prosecution, you're screwed. Put the best prosecutor on there. If he's a guy and a drunk, who cares? Put your best prosecutor on this. But Gil Garcetti, I believe, was the name of the guy that ran that at the time. This is really one of those terrifying miscarriages of justice that should have been a laydown. And that was the problem. They assumed that it was a laydown. They assumed they didn't have anything to worry about. They thought, look, man, we got enough evidence. This is, we'll just put a couple of people on there that may not be as good at this as other people, but it's a woman and it's a black guy, right? So this will make us look really diverse. We had just gotten over Rodney King, watching men beat this guy like a piñata, and then have a jury go, they didn't break any of the rules. Now, maybe they didn't. But if they didn't, then that rule book was so effed up. It's like the rule book that says you can put your knee on a guy's neck. You can use chokeholds. Okay, if that's in your rule book, fix the rule book. But to see Rodney King get beat on video the way that he did, and then have all of those people found not guilty, made anybody, and I don't care what color you are, if you're not racist, it made everybody go, man, that's effed up, right? On the heels of that, we get the O.J. Simpson case, and the entire world is looking. That low-speed Bronco chase, and it had to be low speed because it was faked, you see. Anyway, that low-speed Bronco chase was one of the most watched things that ever happened because it went on for a really long time. There were people out there holding signs, right, that said the juice is loose, all of that stuff. He had to be found not guilty. He had to be. If all of those things planted all of those doubts in the heads of the jury, take his blood, drive it to the crime scene before you take it to the lab, does that smell bad? Put a 3 in the chat if that stinks, right? Yeah, wearing suits every day to make her look strong and fierce. I think the jury would have liked a sweet woman tell them how much of a prick that man was, not trying to be powerful. Good call. You know what else would have been fantastic? If they had put all of the people on the stand that said, I watched OJ beat his wife. Do you know why OJ Simpson said he wouldn't take the polygraph test? By the way, he later took it and failed it. However, but the reason that he said he wouldn't take a polygraph test, and the one he failed, he only failed for the defense. He didn't take it for the world. But he told one of his friends who was in the police department, I'm not taking the polygraph test. And the guy said, why not? This will prove you're not guilty. And he said, because I've dreamed of killing her. Probably not a smart thing to say, but he said, I've dreamed of killing her. This man was guilty as sin. He was guilty as sin. He had been a guy who was a controlling piece of crap as a man, and he couldn't stand the fact that Nicole was no longer in his life. And I get that. I mean, it's got to be a very difficult thing. Renee B says, I'd never take a polygraph test. Neither would I, but I wouldn't take a polygraph test because I was usually guilty. I would take a polygraph test if I wasn't. I promise you I would. If I hadn't done anything wrong, if they said, hey, did you kill this person? And I didn't, I sure as shit would take that polygraph test. Because theoretically, that would make it far easier for the prosecution to go start looking for the person that actually did it. Isn't this something incredible? This is hard. Did he play for the Commanders, Redskins? No, he played for the Buffalo Bills. Not to mention he wrote a book called If I Did It, This Is How. Wow, what a jacked up concept. And that book, by the way, didn't make him any money. He thought he would get away with that. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. But then a civil case took all the evidence that I'm talking about that they didn't bring in. The knife, the woman that saw him up on the median, the guy that sold him the knife, all of these things got brought in. All of the mishandling of the first case was not mishandled in the civil case. Those lawyers killed it. And a $33 million judgment was put in against OJ. Now, by way of full disclosure, he didn't pay much of that. I mean, they couldn't go after his pension. So he was getting huge checks from the NFL. Not huge as in you can live on Bundy Drive or on Rockingham Drive in Brentwood. But you can move to Florida, get a fairly nice place and play golf all the time, which is what he did up until the time that he decided to get back some of his memorabilia that he thought people had stolen from him. walked in with a pistol, because this is a good dude, walked into a casino with a gun, went upstairs, held some people hostage, and the state of Nevada said, you can kill people in California and get away with it, but pull some shit in Nevada and you're going to prison. And he did. He went through the same fish tank I went through. I did time in Nevada as well. He then got sent to a special needs yard, right, where he could be protected or whatever. And he died last year of cancer. Some of his kids have come out since then to say, yeah, he was my dad. They also didn't take life insurance. Some of the kids were disgusted by who the father was. I don't think too many people on planet Earth don't think OJ did this. Apparently, there's at least one person that thinks that the Bronco chase was staged for God only knows what reason, and that Al Cowens wanted to plant the glove. Here's the thing: I don't pontificate too much about religion, but I want to tell you something. He's smoking turds in hell. Make no mistake. That ain't a guy that's sitting up there. Now, I know people will say, yeah, but if he accepted Christ at the end, you got to truly repent. I don't think OJ was capable of truly repenting. What kind of guy kills two people, right? Special circumstance, that's the death penalty. Kills two people as viciously as two people have ever been killed. Do not ever FOIA or try to take a look at the autopsy photos. It would absolutely blow your mind. His wife's head was, for all intent and purpose, decapitated. There was very little holding her head still together. When Ron Goldman was buried, they had to do things with the clothing because they wanted an open casket. He was cut so hard across the throat. Now, what would do that? I don't know. A 12-inch stiletto purchased from a cutlery store? This isn't the kind of switchblade that you buy in Tijuana. This was a very, very expensive 12-inch long blade. That isn't even legal in almost any state in America. Yeah, the mother of his kids. Kill her, leave her right on the steps to the house, and leave everybody, right? The kids inside, forget about them. Yeah, I saw the pics. It's absolutely horrific. As I've said before you think I'm a ghoul, in prison, one of the favorite pastimes is FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, because they can't stop inmates from doing it. So you're allowed to do 4 a year, or you were when I was in there. So guys that don't do FOIA, like the guys that have no interest in it, there are guys that want to do 20 of them a year. So they'll go up to a guy and go, hey, I'll buy you 2 jars of coffee. I just want your name on this. We're going to fill out a FOIA request. And I used to be that guy. I didn't do any FOIA. And a guy wanted the stuff on MK Ultra. So I gave him my name. And all of the stuff got delivered to me during a lockdown. We were locked down for almost 6 months, right? 23 hours a day locked in a cell. I got a chance to read a hell of a lot of stuff on MK Ultra. And it kind of got me into FOIA. Somebody else that was in there who argued that OJ was innocent wanted to FOIA all of the records that they could that people can't just go and get. Yes, as inmates, we had to pay for it because it came in paper form. I know that it is different now when you can do it digitally. There are certain FOIAs that you're not going to have to pay for. Jeannie Hansen, the pictures were horrific, right? Corey, welcome. Corey Coconut, glad you're here. Yeah, so I had to pay when I was in prison because the shipping costs are absolutely incredible. I'm not joking you when I tell you that the pile of papers went from the floor to this high on the MK Ultra stuff. And almost all of it's BS. One of the things that they did, I don't know how much they're doing it today, but one of the things that they like to do with FOIA is throw a bunch of stuff in there that makes absolutely no sense and has nothing to do with what you're looking at, right? Oh, Corey, you're going to have so much more fun if you don't lurk. Everybody here is very, very cool. A lot of true crime aficionados here. So they'll put a bunch of stuff in the FOIA that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, including like how many pens they bought, what they spent on this, which car allowances were being paid, how much no, you know what? They're very difficult to look at. They really are. But here's the thing. When I say I watched the entire OJ trial, I'm not exaggerating. I watched the entire OJ trial. I did not miss one day of it. Sometimes I caught the replays at night. I watched all of the color commentary by what was then Court TV. There wasn't, True TV or whatever the hell they call it these days. It was Court TV. And all of the different stuff that was being talked about all of the time. I spent a ton of time on this case. It's what got me into true crime. Truly, I was fascinated by this. I also didn't think that the guy should be found guilty. I know he did it. But the problem becomes if you go, well, he did it. So whatever they did wrong in the evidence gathering and all that, then the next dude that didn't do it is subject to the same shit. If the prosecution goes, guaranteed he's guilty, well, then what difference does it make if the evidence collected poorly? If they could have convicted OJ with all of that shoddy crap that they did, then they probably could have convicted anybody else. I mean, honestly, that case was handled so poorly that all of these years later, 30 some odd years later, and we're still talking about it. And the reason that we're still talking about it is because this was an abortion of a prosecution. Gil Garcetti blew this in ways that people simply couldn't, right? If you went out of your way to try to screw this up, the length of time that the jurors were sequestered, you got that's a prison sentence. They spent 6 months away from their family just listening to DNA. That's all. They weren't shooting text messages and emails back and forth to family. This was an absolute abortion in every single way that it could be. And I understand the concept of sequestering the jury, right? I do. I understand the concept. It makes me wonder whether or not they should have sequestered the Diddy jury, right? But if you're going to sequester a jury, maybe don't take 6 months just to talk about DNA. Much like how they screwed up the Casey Anthony case. The Casey Anthony case was horrific, but I'm going to be doing a show on that. They didn't just let him. That didn't have to be in there in any way, right? Darden, the second chair, right, the co-prosecutor on this with Marcia Clark, it was his idea. He said, we get him to put the glove on. It proves that it fits him. Who gives a crap? Again, why put Mark Furman on the stand? You literally, in California, you can enter that evidence and just say it obviously would have been found. There were cops back there looking. If something is found in a really bizarre place, like you had to crawl under a bed, go up inside it, tear a little piece of fabric, okay, we're going to need to talk to the guy that did that so we can cross-examine him. But if you're shining flashlights all over the backyard, right, at the Rockingham house, especially because Cato Kalin, who obviously was also in on it with our Canadian friend, because Cato said he heard a loud banging, 3 of them, boom, 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 moved the picture. He thought perhaps there was an earthquake, right? So they were already out looking, right? They were already out looking for this stuff. They would have obviously found it. Putting him on the stand was the dumbest thing they did. The glove was second. Once Furman took the stand and was obviously a racist, they played tapes of this dude using the N-word, talking about planting evidence, and they put this guy on the stand. They're idiots. They're idiots. Yeah, this would not be a conflict of interest, right? Whether or not Marcia and Darden got a little close, I'm not trying to be a dick, but if neither of them are married, how could they not get a little close? For this entire trial, just the 6-month period of time, you're going to spend all day long in court. When you leave court, you're going to go get in a small room together, talk about what just happened and what you're going to do the next day. They were probably spending 19 hours a day together. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something jumped off. Is it a conflict of interest? No. If Marcia Clark was banging one of the dream teams from OJ, that would be a conflict of interest. It's not proper. I'm sure that that there could be some lawsuits. You're not supposed to be, screwing around with people that you work with. More often than not, the people at Human Resources will have a problem with that. No, I was not in prison during the trial. This was long. I didn't go to prison until late in life. I got away with things for a really long time because as a public speaker, I wasn't breaking the law much other than doing heroin. When all of that blew up, I really kind of went full bore into the crime thing. But I didn't go to prison until I was in my 30s. And this case, I was a young man. I was in my 20s when this happened. Spanx Calhoun was 2 years old, I think. Yeah, this is a little different. This is slightly different. And what Letitia is really in trouble for is BSing, right? You're not supposed to have relationships. But what Letitia James got in trouble for was allegedly spreading money around to this guy. Laura Lou says, I was annoyed with Cato Kalin. Seemed like he was protecting OJ. You know what? Cato is still around. He does a podcast. And I'm not gonna get bummed out with Cato. I mean, he still complains and says, I always wanted to be famous, but this was the worst way to get famous. And, I hate it and this and that. I mean, he's been cashing checks since it happened. I'm not busting his nuts. I probably would have done the same thing if I was in his shoes. But Cato was a couch surfer. He was a guy that was hanging out there. I'm sure it was a difficult situation for him to be in. He was very close friends with Nicole Brown. That's how he met OJ. OJ let him couch surf. Well, it wasn't really couch surfing. He was living pretty good. He had his own place, so to speak. Your brain is putting a blue-suited Marcia Clark with Dershowitz. Oh, yeah, Dershowitz was part of the Dream Team. Didn't spend a whole lot of time in front of the camera. The Dream Team, let's go over it because this is literally fascinating. When you start looking at how many people OJ had on this Dream Team, you had Robert Shapiro, who basically was Bob Shapiro, and later Johnny Cochran, including Johnny Cochran, lead attorney for Famous for If It Doesn't Fit, You Must Have Quit. Bob Shapiro, initial lead, focused on negotiations and strategy. F. Lee Bailey, one of the most famous attorneys of all time at that time. He was a cross-examination expert. He was the one that grilled Mark Furman. Alan Dershowitz, appellate specialist. He handled all legal briefs. Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, they were the DNA experts from the Innocent Projects. They attacked forensic evidence. Bob Kardashian, that Kardashian, right? He's the one with the daughter that got famous for, a sex tape that got leaked. Mom apparently sat down with her and went through the 3 different versions of that sex tape to say, which one is the best one? What angle do I look the best at doing this? That's a sick-ass family. Bob Kardashian's rolling over in his grave. He was a personal friend to O.J. Simpson. This case literally destroyed his life. Carl Douglas handled day-to-day operations. Gerald Uhlman, he was a constitutional law professor. He argued motions. And Sean Harley, a junior attorney, research and support. This was literally the Dream Team. What is the deciding factor for sequestering a jury? Only murder? P. Taylor, I couldn't answer that question. It is. I know that the judge makes the final decision. I think media has more to do with it than does what the person is charged with. If by some chance they have a really good opportunity to be tainted, going home at the end of the day means that every single thing on television is going to be talking about the case that you're involved with. Kardashian did not like Bailey. That's the truth. But here's the sad thing. Robert Kardashian believed that O.J. Simpson was innocent. They were best friends. Robert Kardashian was also really close with Nicole, had known her forever. He believed O.J. was innocent. He sat him down in a room and said, tell me the truth. Did you do this? He said, no, I didn't. And he believed that. And later on towards the end of the trial, allegedly, there's actually a lot to back this up, but they gave OJ a polygraph and he failed it. Not for the world to see, for the defense, right? Because God forbid you put him on the stand, right? But if he was innocent or whatever, and that killed Robert Kardashian. He got OJ off for killing a woman that he knew well and had a lot of respect for. And it literally destroyed Robert Kardashian. It was a very difficult thing for this guy. And it's rugged when you're an attorney and you have to deal with this kind of issue. Kris Kardashian did testify against OJ. I agree with you, Roxy Cole. I don't dislike Kato Kaelin. I don't. I think that he was under an immense amount of pressure. Imagine being Kato. You get a knock at the door, right? You're living in this bungalow. You're figuring you won the freaking lottery, right? You go out to Brentwood, and all of a sudden you're living in a bungalow that is being paid for by somebody else, right? And you're just happy as a pig in mud out there. And you get a knock at the door. There's a bunch of cops there. There's a flashlight in your face. And the next day, you're Mick Jagger kind of famous. He was on talk shows. Everybody wanted to interview him. He literally went from no one knows who I am to the entire world knows who he is. And he had to feel some kind of kinship with OJ. And I think that now he's 100% convinced that OJ was guilty. The reason is he got to see the entire trial. But at that time, we didn't know that. You want to hear something really funny, Renee B? I think I've told this story on the Lifeboat before, but if I haven't, I wish Johnny Scoble was still here, but I bet you he's playing his guitar. But there was a period of time where we were not being particularly good people, and we had a friend who was very well off. His family was tied to the washerless faucet. You know, when you turn your faucet off and it doesn't leak. Their family had a patent that had something to do with that. And this kid used to hang out with us. He wasn't a kid. He was actually a year older than I was, but we were all very young. And we found ourselves in a bit of trouble having to do with the selling of chemicals. We were unlicensed pharmacists, so to speak. We were moving a little bit of dope, which isn't something I usually did. And in fact, all we were doing was middlemaning, but it was a very large deal. So he said, my family has a friend who has a law office. He's supposed to be a really good lawyer. And he calls up and we're listening on a speakerphone. And he was like, hey, is Mr. Bailey there? And she was like, yeah. And the guy comes on and he's like, F. Lee Bailey. And Johnny and I know who the hell it is. We're like, God, you're calling F. Lee Bailey? And F. Lee Bailey got on and he started to describe to him the situation that we were in. And he said, we weren't Scoville at the time, we were Miller. And he goes, can the Millers hear me? And we're doing this one. And he goes, no, it's just me. He goes, get the hell away from them as fast as you can. Get away from them. Put this all on them. It was a hell of a phone call. So that was my F. Lee Bailey tie-in. Actually heard him say my name once and not be particularly kind about it. Patty Hearst, I would love to do a Patty Hearst stream. I will do that. I'll have to buff up on my Patty Hearst kidnapping and bank robbery. I have read a couple of books on it, but it's been a really, really long time. That's right, Renee B. I was working as sort of an unlicensed. I was just a middleman. I knew an unlicensed pharmacist who sold an awful lot of the Bolivian marching powder. I put him together with a guy that wanted to buy a bunch of that stuff. Turns out the guy we put him together with also worked for a police department. It was kind of a bummer. Just Jones says, yeah, I'm old and I remember all of that crap. Patty Hearst is a great topic, and I promise you I will do one. I will do a show on her. I think that would be an interesting rabbit hole to go down. This is a cautionary tale. It really is. This is a cautionary tale because what ends up happening is if you have a client that you can't fight the merits of the case, you're not going to go in there if you're O.J. Simpson's dream team and you got all the money in the world to fight this case. You're not going to go in there and say, well, just plain and simple, the guy that they saw didn't fit the 6'2", 240-pound black man. Everything pointed to OJ. So what you do in that is every time you say the police work sucks. I don't know if you ever saw a movie called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, or if you've ever read the book, but they got a case where it's pretty damn obvious what happened. So they say, first thing we do is we challenge the crime scene. The crime scene at Bundy was the worst handling of a crime scene in history. When you show up, right, at a crime scene, you don't leave the crime scene, right, until everything is done. By the time they come and get the bodies, put them into the back of the hearse, everything has been photographed. They got there, saw the crime scene, took off, left it for all intents and purposes being guarded by a couple of beat cops. They took off to go over and see if they could find OJ. Then they get over there and they see what they believe to be blood on the Bronco. Turns out it was blood, right? But they see this. Now they go, well, how do we know he's not dead? Now, did they really believe that? Have you thought about having us vote on cases we want to explore next? You know what I've been doing is telling people, look, when this one's over, put it in the comment section. Not while we're live, but when it's over, put it in the comment section. And that's why we're talking about OJ. A bunch of people said they wanted to talk about OJ. The next one we're going to do is Marilyn Monroe's conspiracy theory stuff, because that's a pretty fascinating deep dive. That's another one that's coming up. But yeah, I love it when you guys weigh in. Some of the best stuff that we've ever talked about is because you guys wanted me to talk about it. And I don't mind doing research and talking about it. You know what? I believe that book too. I believe that book so much I read it 3 times. I read it 3 times. It's absolute horseshit. Nothing about that was real. Yeah, I love Marilyn Monroe too, Edgy. Love her. Have you ever noticed that my significant other has that little Marilyn Monroe thing right there? Sorry. Yeah, Helter Skelter was absolute bullshit, and Vincent Bugliosi is not and was not a good man. It's simply the way it is. He beat women. He did all kinds of really ugly stuff. I'm not going to say allegedly because it happened. It did. Think about it in today's world, right? Picture the prosecutor prosecuting the case, and you've got the person that's writing the book, your co-author is sitting directly behind you while you're prosecuting this. That's a problem. That's a freaking problem. Everything about that case sucked. Nothing about that case made any sense. Oh my God, you have to. That's the entire thing, right? The entire Maryland thing is about the relationship that she had with Robert and John F. Kennedy. Throw in Peter Lawford, right? Who allegedly may have seen her the night that she passed away. That is a fascinating deep dive. It really is. And Judge Ito, what a disaster. And it's a pretty good argument. I'm sorry. I love watching a case live. I love watching a case when it's being tried because lawyers are incredible communicators. It is always fascinating to be able to watch them do what they do, right? The trouble becomes if it's a long case, Ito was going home at the end of the day. He wasn't sequestered. He was going home and watching himself on court TV. Make no mistake, he was. And he got too into it. Yeah, he started to like the fame too much. Someone said earlier, I didn't click on it, that they were doing the dancing Itos. It's got to be really funny if you're Ron Goldman's sister, right? Or Ron Goldman's parents, or Michelle Brown's, Simpson's kids. It's amazing sometimes the shit that we can laugh at. And I am a dark humor cat, but I think there are things we should probably maybe steer clear of. That's just bad taste and bad form. And they were doing the dancing Itos before the jury had even reached a verdict. And don't think Ito didn't see that and love it. He was a guy that really loved the limelight. And that's a potential that can happen, especially if you got a case that goes on for almost ever, right? 6 months wasted just on talking about DNA. Granted, at the time, people didn't understand DNA in the same way that they did today, right? There was a time where explaining that everybody had a unique fingerprint sounded insane to people. Yeah. This is worth diving into. Now, OJ's got, there's one OJ daughter in particular that got into selling real estate and has done everything she could to distance herself from her dad. And she just, she knows. I don't think there's anybody on earth that doesn't believe OJ Simpson killed his wife. Honestly. I never realized that there were OJ Simpson conspiracy theorists that believed that the low-speed Bronco chase was staged. For what mother-loving reason, I would not be able to wrap my brain around. But I didn't believe or know that there were people out there that believed that. I think that's fascinating. I might actually try to do a deep dive to see where that theory came from and why, because it just does not make any sense. Yeah, the daughter with Nicole just jumped. That trial cost a buttload of money for nothing, right? They got nothing out of it. They spent all of that money, and all they did was damage the reputation of the LAPD even more than it was after Rodney King, which you got to really work at, right? You got to really work at it to make them look worse than they did after that. Laura Lou, she posted on Facebook, I think is where she first started talking about it. I don't have Facebook anymore. There are YouTube channels that have talked about the daughter and what has been said. So you can check it out on YouTube. And if you play with AI, you can put that in. Don't believe AI. But when AI tells you, you can say to them, where did you find this information? That's what I use AI for. I use AI to do all the research to find where the articles are, and then I go and read them. That's what I'm saying, right? That's what I'm saying. And I'm not mad at them. I'm really not. But every once in a while, people will say things like there was somebody the other night that just said, if Maduro had anything to do with drugs, why was there no mention of drugs in the, in the indictment? The entire indictment is drugs. Every once in a while, someone will say something, and it's like the scene from The Naked Gun where everyone goes at the same time, the whole audience full of people. That's kind of where I go with that sometimes. Joyful Rachel, good to see you. The dog, Cato, that's right. He had an Akita. They had an Akita dog. And the Akita was found out wandering around. And my heart goes out to the Akita, honestly. How scary for a dog to see that kind of carnage. Animals don't like the smell of blood. It freaks them out. They certainly don't want to see owners that they have bonded with butchered. By all accounts, like the dog got to the Bundy house that used to belong to OJ and Nicole and wouldn't go down the walkway, like sat there terrified right at the end of the walkway. It was an Akita that had blood on its paws. Yes, Sydney and Justin were Nicole and OJ's kids. They were inside when mom was killed outside. And it's odd that there were two Catos in the case. One was the dog and the other was Cato Kalin. By the way, of the two of them, I did prefer Cato the dog, but I don't hate Cato Kalin. I know a lot of people do. I always kind of, it's a double-edged sword, right? Fame is not necessarily a bad thing, but infamy sucks. I know a little something about this. To be infamous and have people know you for something that you wish they didn't know you for is a bitch. It's a tough way to live. And I think that Cato Kalin has made the best of it. He has a podcast. He does fairly well with it. The kids must have heard the attack. You know what, Sandy Wandy? I said that from the day it happened, right? Now, by way of full disclosure, right? If you and again, sometimes to talk about true crime, we have to talk about things that are very unpleasant, right? Exsanguination. If you cut the big ones, you're going to bleed out in about 4 minutes. So as nasty as that crime scene looked, it could have been over inside of a couple of minutes. It may have even been less than that. The number of wounds that were inflicted on the both of them, it led certain people to believe that there had to be more than one person that did it. However, there weren't multiple footprints leading away from this. OJ was a strong guy. I know that he tried to look decrepit as shit when he got into court, but the truth of the matter is this was a guy that ran people over in the NFL, right? Ran people over. This was a very strong guy. Yeah, you're right. If something is traumatic, your brain can block it out, and that happens a lot to younger people. You know what, just Joan, that's a very kind thing to say. And well, here's the thing. She married a nasty and stupid guy before. I'm sorry. It's just low hanging fruit for the ex-husband there. This case is sad for the family. And if you're the daughter, you don't want to be anywhere near the last name Simpson, right? Think about if you're Jeffrey Dahmer's brother. Jeffrey Dahmer's brother changed his name. Thank you, just Joan. I appreciate that. Hopefully I've learned too. She's an incredible woman. I'm blessed beyond belief. This is one of those things that Brian Koberger has two sisters. If your last name is Koberger, your life is going to suck because of what your relative did. Jeffrey Dahmer's brother changed his last name, which was probably a genius move. Or if your last name is Manson, if you're the kid of Charles Manson, the sins of your relative are going to taint the rest of your life. That's a really hard thing. Yeah, everyone you meet is going to ask you about it forever. That's an absolute stone cold fact, whether you want to hear it or not. Or worse, you're going to go, hi, I'm Jim Bundy, right? And they're going to go, ew, right? I don't think I'd want to be alone with this cat. They automatically start to assume that if that person's, got a screw loose, chances are they do too. They antagonized Scott Peterson's family as they came to and left court. I think that was wrong. They did nothing wrong. And this happens all the time. Charles Manson is not related to Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson took the name. He wasn't born that way. Everyone in that band, there was one person that called themselves Twiggy something or other. They took the name of a supermodel and a very famous model and then a serial killer. And they all took their names that way. So Marilyn Manson took Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson and made the name. Twiggy, what's the name of the guy that buried all the people in his basement? The guy that dressed like a clown. Somebody's going to help me with that. I can't believe I can't remember that. He buried a ton of kids in his basement. Gacy, thank you. Twiggy Gacy, I think, is one of the other people in the band, but everybody in the band took the name of a serial killer for the last name. There she is. There's my girl. Yeah, Marilyn, thank you. See, look at all of the people in there that knew that. See, I got a very wise audience that way. It's sad, all of the shit that people take because of their relatives. I say on here all the time, great parents raise drug addicts. It happens. There are parents that do everything right and the kid still becomes a drug addict. That happens. No, Reese did not have a crush on John Gacy. She has a crush on that other freak. And she doesn't, right? If she actually sees the real Ed Kemper, she'll go, ew, she has a crush on the guy that played Ed Kemper. That I can handle. If she actually had a crush on Ed Kemper, I might vomit. Yeah, very classy, right? But people do this. People do this constantly. They did it to, even before the internet was really cooking, when Richard Jewell found the bag that had a bomb in it, and by all accounts saved the lives of a bunch of people, he got harassed to the point where the rest of his life was shit. All of the Duke lacrosse players, they're still getting harassed. The woman that accused them of rape has come out and said, it didn't happen. I did it as a money grab, blah, blah, blah. There are still guys from the Duke lacrosse team that if they say, yeah, I went to Duke. Really? Did you play any sports? Yeah, no, I played lacrosse. What year? Because there are still people that are going to always treat those people like that's just the way it is. You just got a huge ticket driving through Kansas. It is my fault. For the love of God, I feel horrible. What the heck are you doing in Kansas? Audra in Kansas. See, if you'd stuck to your name, you'd have been fine. But that does suck. You know what? We're leaving this one up. This will be the last comment of the day for no other reason than it just kind of makes me laugh. And, well, I'm not a bright man, but I do like a good laugh. Yeah, there's something there. I mean, Gacy was in much better shape, but I can see where you're going with that. Gacy was he's a very twisted individual, John Wayne Gacy, but he got put to death, which was good. Didn't plan on seeing an OJ, John Wayne Jester. That's that lightning quick. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Bernsey, you never know what you're going to get here, including John Wayne Jester, which is just downright hysterical. Thank you, Quibsy. I changed my mind. We'll leave that one up there. All right, people. Between now and the next time I see you, don't believe all of the BS. YouTube is a cesspool. I'm sorry, it really is. Today I was going through all of the Diddy stuff again because Diddy is it's a subject that won't go away. There's a ton of people that keep asking for more updates on it. I'm going to have to keep doing wait a second. Is McDonald the guy that allegedly killed his family and they tried to make it look like a Manson thing? Is that the Jeff McDonald case you're talking about, Alicia, before I go? Corey Coconut, thank you for no longer lurking. It's a lot more fun when you talk, I promise. Network news is the true cesspool in this lifetime. I agree with that. I really do agree with that. Network news sucks. Okay, yeah, I do know that case. And it's a fascinating case, right? It really is. That is a fascinating case. Okay, listen, when this is over, leave a comment. By the way, if you've never hit subscribe, go ahead and do that. Hit the bell for notification. And then every time I do one of these, regardless of what kind of weird stuff we're talking about, you'll get the notification. Maybe don't do it if you're driving fast through Kansas. Sorry. I do know the Jeff McDonald case. I'd be willing to take a look at that one. But when this is done, if there's something you guys want to talk about here that's true crime, leave me a comment. I see 4 or 5 of them. I'll start deep diving that rascal because it's kind of what I do. And I'm doing more of it because I miss my girl. It's actually, it's downright painful if you want to know the truth. All right, people, between now and the next time I see you, put a little love in your heart. I'm Tommy. God bless.